Hello there, and welcome to a new live session on this ASP.NET Core for absolute beginners. I would say it's a training, but I still consider it as being just a live coding session. And the biggest benefit from my point of view for you is that you can get here to interact with me in real time. And please just use this opportunity and jump in and write in the chat whenever you have a question, or if you want to add something, or if something is not clear enough, because for sure, maybe there are certain things that I don't explain as well as you would expect, or for your understanding. So just please jump in and let me know, basically, when things are not clear enough. The main thing here is that when we are doing these kind of remote things, which are fairly common these days, I would say, is that I really can't see you. So I really don't have an option to understand from your body language if certain topics need to be discussed in further more detail. And just to get warmed up, it would be awesome if you could just write in the chat from where you are watching right now. And if you're wondering, by the way, I'm streaming from Timișoara in Romania. So it's evening here. So please don't be shy and just please jump in and let me know where you are watching from. That would be awesome and totally appreciated. Okay. So last time out in lesson 6, at the end we actually had a problem because last time out we have added our database and we have basically done this using this one, services at DB context. And then what we do in our controllers, like this hotel controller, we inject this data context, which is the DB context. So if you didn't watch the previous lesson and you don't have any idea what DB context is and how it works and how we do things, how we really connect to a database from an ASP.NET Core Web API, then please, after this session, of course, just go to the previous one, because you will find really everything on that topic in that lesson, or everything that you actually need to get you started. Now, the problem last time was that when we were running the application, when we were doing a request, we actually had an error, or not even an error. The response just returned the 200 OK, and that was it. And the problem with that was because of the custom middleware that we have implemented a couple of lessons ago, I guess, which is this app use date time header middleware. Now, when I have pushed the code to the branch lesson 6 on GitHub, by the way, you can find a repository here in the description of this video, so you can just go ahead and clone it, fork it, do whatever you want with it. And for each lesson, we have a branch. So for the previous lesson, it was a branch called lesson 6. For this one, right after we finished, I will push it will be a branch lesson 7. So in one of those lessons, we have added this very, very basic middleware that kind of only adds a header to our request. And the middleware is in this folder, middleware. And the problem was the way how we actually returned here a task from result. And that was actually short-circuiting the entire pipeline. So I have changed that here to await next, which should be the correct approach to go. So you can either do this change, or if you want to code along right now and want the easy way to solve that, just comment out this app use datetime header. So just comment it out and it will work. I can promise you it will work. This was the only problem that we had, and I made sure that it's working when we comment this out. So yeah, that's pretty much the way to go. So let's run the application to just test our CRUD endpoints that we have, and that also use a database. And that would be kind of also the starting point for what we want to discuss today, which is actually very, very interesting. By the way, I'm still waiting for you to jump into the chat and let me know where are you watching from. That would be really awesome. Don't let me just talk alone here. It's less fun if I just talk alone. I really like this feeling of a community. So let's try this out first, this get. Right now we don't have anything in a database, so I would assume this should return an empty array, which is correct. So the response is 200 and it is an empty array, which is exactly what we needed. Now, if we want to create a hotel, and here that's actually the part where we need to pay attention, because if we click on try it out, so right now what we do is here we say that, okay, when you want to create a hotel, you kind of need to specify here in this JSON body all the properties that the hotel needs to have. Like for instance, also the hotel ID. However, the thing is, and we discussed this when we talked about the database and entity framework core, is that clients, when they want to create a resource, they really don't need to provide this, as the ID will be generated by the database itself. So this is certainly a property that we actually don't need. Now, of course, we might need the name, the stars, maybe the address, but in rooms, when you create a hotel, you don't really need also to create all the rooms, and we'll look into how we'll do this probably in the next lesson, so next Monday. So what we have done actually, or the way how we create a resource right now is, we don't want to provide rooms, so we will delete this rooms array entirely. We don't want to provide a hotel ID, so we'll delete this entirely. And then we have my first hotel. Let's make it 3 stars. Let's give to the address a certain string, some address. Let's just have dummy data, some city, some country. Hello, Mohamed. Thank you for being a part of this, and thank you for being here. Okay, so the next one would be a description. Let's just have a dummy hotel description. So that would be it. So let's execute this. We see that we get a 201 created. It's the way that we have designed. As I said, this is a very, very important thing when we create resources. We have to pay attention to 3 things. First of all, we need to actually return a 201 created status. Then we need to make sure that we provide a location header, and we see that we have. And the location header should actually contain the URL. And if the client just takes the value and it makes a request to this one, we can even do that by just opening another tab and just doing that. It should receive the resource, which is this one. So that's the whole purpose of this location header. And in the body, it should contain also the created hotel. Now, the thing is that we see that here in the hotel ID, we have 2. And remember that when we have created a hotel, we didn't specify any ID. And this is a proof one more time that the ID actually gets created by the database when the hotel is saved to the database. Now for rooms, we have null because we don't have any rooms, and also for other reasons that we'll discuss into more detail, but probably, I'm not sure if today or next time. And then we have the description. So actually that seems to work. And we have also this get hotels by ID. So we know that the ID is 2. So let's also test this one once again. Okay, we get the same hotel. Now, when we get response, this kind of rooms null, this bothers me a lot. And today we will actually look into, okay, how we can solve this. Basically, we have 2 problems. The first problem is that when we create a resource, you have witnessed this by yourself. We have actually removed a lot of stuff from there. So we have removed the ID, we have removed the entire rooms array. So we have removed all this stuff. Now, the thing is, okay, we have a better way to actually do that and kind of like distinguish between a hotel and the way that it actually is stored in our database and the hotel that a client needs to provide as a JSON body when it wants to create a resource, or a hotel that a client will receive as a response when it gets either the list of hotels or one specific hotel like we do here. And for instance, when we do that, we don't want to receive this rooms null. And this is actually the problem that we want to solve today. And as I said, this means actually, once again, we have to kind of like distinguish between the hotel class that we use in our domain and that we use to store hotels in the database, and have different classes for the front-end part, or for the client part. So the idea is that when a client wants to create a hotel, like we have done here, instead of providing also the list of rooms and the hotel ID, it can just provide that. So we would create a class that contains only this type of properties. Or in other words, it would contain only the properties that the client needs to provide when it wants to create this resource, in our case, a hotel. And this type of classes that we use when we receive a request, we call them data transfer objects, or DTOs. And the idea is that when a client makes a request, kind of what we want to do is here we will provide another class that will contain only this type of information for that. And then when the request arrives in our controller, we actually want to map this class that we receive from the client to our hotel that we store in the database. And we will look into how we can do this actually very, very easy. And then of course we use our DB context and save the hotel in the database. When a client makes a request for a hotel, it will also include these rooms null and so on. And we don't want to do that. So it means that our controller, when it gets the request, it will get the resource from the database. The resource will arrive there as a hotel from our domain, from the database. We will translate it to a new class that will show to the front end, and then the new class, the DTO, the data transfer object, is actually what we return in the body. So that's kind of like the whole concept of DTOs. And once again, this is not a concept only for ASP.NET Core. It's really a very general concept when it comes to developing APIs. So is everything clear till now? What's the whole point of having these DTOs? So in order to create those DTOs, let me add here a new folder, and we'll call this folder DTOs. Because that's the folder where we will store our DTOs, okay? Cool. So once we have this folder, let's go back to this controller, and let's first of all think about this create hotel. So this is our controller, and right now you see that from body we expect a hotel, which is our entity that we also store in the database. But as said, we want to create a class that will contain only the properties that the client really needs to specify when it wants to create a new hotel. So in this case, this would be a hotel that is specific for creation when a client makes a call to our API. So in our DTOs folder, what I'll do here is add a new class. And I'll call this class hotel create DTO. Okay, cool. So we have this class. Now, to make things easier, we can go in our domain layer. Where is it? Where are you? Here, hotel. Okay, and let's for now just take in all these properties from here, and we'll paste them here. Now, the only thing that we will do is we will then remove the properties that clients don't need to provide. The first thing is this list of room. So clients don't need to provide a list of room as a JSON body when they want to create a hotel, and they don't need to provide a hotel ID. Okay, so they need to provide a name for the hotel. They need to provide stars. They need to provide an address, a city, a country, and a description for that. Okay, so that's fairly straightforward. And now the only thing that we would actually have to do in this case, or at least for now, is let's go back to our hotels controller, and then here in the body, from body instead of hotel, let's have here a hotel, or how did it, hotel create DTO. So of course we will need to add a using for that, but once we do this, actually everything's okay. And in this case, we have to actually remodel things a little bit. Of course, because right now, as said, we have to translate this hotel to a new hotel that is actually from our domain. So the way that we will do this is, right now, we do this manually because I really want us to get into the process of what we are actually doing. But then I will show you actually a way using a library that will actually replace everything that we write with literally one single line of code, which is very, very cool, I guess. So let's create a new hotel. Let's name it domain hotel to know that it's exactly our domain class. So the class that we actually need to store in the database, because we can't store this in the database. As in the DB context, we have a DB set of hotel. So we have to translate kind of this object to, let's make it like this, that it's clear. So we have to translate this object to this one because they are different. This one contains less properties than this one, so they are totally different. So in this case, that would be equals new, and let's call it a hotel. And we will do this right now one by one. So let's name it domain hotel. So we don't want to specify the ID, but we want to specify the address. And the address we get here from what we have in the body. Okay, so then we have this domain hotel once again, and which is the next property, city. I guess we want a city, and that would be equal to hotel.city. Then we will have domain hotel country equals to hotel.country. That's cool. Okay, then we have this domain hotel. What else do we have? We have description. That would be hotel.description. Okay, we're fine with that. And then we have domain hotel dot I don't know, stars, I guess. We have address, city, country, description. I guess stars is the only thing that is still missing. So that would be hotel dot stars. And right now that we have translated this object to this object, which is our domain model. So once again, this is what the client needs to provide when it makes a request. This is what we store in the database. Those two are not necessarily similar. They could be different. So it's up to our logic how we will do this type of translation. And then here in this data context, in this DB context, of course, we want to actually pass in our domain hotel because that's the entity that we actually receive. And then the other thing is that we have here a domain hotel, okay? And right now that should be good to go. And I see here a question. First of all, I want to thank you for providing knowledge on live stream. I was okay, but I miss live streaming every day, and I also miss my doubts to ask my country. Yeah, so sorry for that. I guess you're from Pakistan, I guess. Would I, or India? I don't recall exactly, but I recall that we still talked. No, I guess it actually won't be possible that, unfortunately, because yeah, I just finished my working day and had 1 hour of kind of like a break, and yeah, then I have started this one. So it's and then it becomes too late for me, and I have to wake up early in the morning. But these sessions, this actually remain. You can watch them also later, and you can just also comment there. So please feel welcome to do that. But unfortunately, I really don't think that I would be able to do that. Sorry for that. Okay. Good. Okay, so right now we have done this. So let's run the application and let's look at the difference actually, because that's something that that we can already actually see here in our API, in our Swagger documentation of the API. Okay, so let's just wait a little bit for loading. What if there are many properties? What do you mean by that? They are classes. They could have a lot of properties or few properties. Still, we would need to use DTOs. It's because the problem that we want to solve using DTOs is still there, no matter if you have 3 or 4 properties or if you have 50. Or are you worried that you have to manually kind of convert between the DTO and the domain class? Just let me know, Mohammed. Okay, so until Mohammed replies here, let's already take a look here if we want to create a resource. So right now you see that we have only the properties that we need to provide. We don't need to delete anything from here because all this information is information that we need to provide. Let's have here my second hotel. Let's make this be a 4-star hotel. Address, some address, once again, city. It would be some city. Just use dummy data. Some country, and then description. My second hotel in API. Okay, so you see that we just have here the data that we need to provide. So this is the actual change that that made our life more easier, or the life of the consumers of our APIs, because usually there will be a React app or a Vue app or an Angular app that would consume the API. So in that case, they would know that they should only provide this information when they create the hotel, and that's it. So things are much easier. So if we execute this right now, we would see that we will have this created, and we see that it was created. And right now we see that we have this name of the hotel, we have the stars, address, and things like that. Now, the reason why we see this information, you see that we also do not have the ID of the hotel, and we do not have the list of rooms for this hotel. Now, the reason why this is the case is that we actually return exactly what we get from the client. Mohammed, it's no problem. Just try to say it in other words. I'm also not an expert on English. So, are you worried about the fact that if you have a lot of properties, you would have to write a lot of code like this? So, is this your concern? Because I'm trying to understand, to actually be able to try to formulate an answer for that. Okay, so the reason why we receive actually the same is because we pass in, you see here, this hotel that we get here. But if we change this to be the domain hotel, then of course we would get in the response this entity that we have from our domain. But now we have a problem, because if we would be to look at the response that we actually get, I mean DTO map for domain class, yeah, and you'll see that as I said, I just wanted to do this manually right now to understand exactly what we are doing here. But just in a few minutes, I'll show you another way with the help of a library that will actually replace everything that we have here with one single line of code. So no more than one line. And no matter how big your classes are, how many properties they have, it will always still be one line, and that would be it. But this will come in just a few moments. Okay, so the other thing that I still want to say here is that when we return the body, now if we return this hotel here, we don't have an ID on that. And that is not okay because, as I said, the consumer needs to know the ID of a hotel if it wants, for instance, to get only one hotel by ID. It's something that we have in the API, and each API has. So we need to return the ID. Now, in this domain hotel, we have the ID, but there we have also the list of rooms, and we don't want to return the list of rooms. So we are kind of in a situation where actually this one doesn't fit us because it doesn't contain the ID, and this one doesn't fit us because it contains the list of rooms. So what do we do in this case? And this question actually goes to all of you who are watching right now. So what should we do in this case? Once again, the problem statement is when we return here in this created, if we return this here, it won't contain the ID, and we need the ID. But if we return this one, it will contain the ID, but it will also contain the list of rooms, and we don't want to have that in the response. So how should we solve that? And the reason why I'm asking you at this point is because we already have covered the answer. And I'm really curious about what your proposals would be on how to actually go on with that. And until you answer, I'll just grab something to drink. Sorry. So, ladies and gentlemen, how should we solve this problem? I'll repeat it if you want. So the problem is when we create a resource and when we return with this created action, we have to specify here an object that should be placed in the body. Now the problem is if we place this object in the body, it won't contain the ID, and that is not okay. But if we place this object in the body, like we have it right now, it will contain the ID but also the list of rooms, and we don't want to have the list of rooms. So how should we solve that? Any ideas? Come on, there are really no bad answers here. I just want to get in touch with you and just to feel this actually as a real interaction. Okay. Unfortunately, I see there is no answer, or I think after save will contain ID. Yes, this will contain the ID after the save, this one. That's totally correct, but it will also contain the list of rooms, and we don't want to have the list of rooms. Now, the answer is here, how did we solve this problem when we wanted to create the resource? Well, we have created a DTO for that contains the exact properties that the client actually needs to pass in the JSON body. Now, following the exact same proceeding, we can simply create a new DTO that will represent a hotel as we want to present it to our consumers. So we have here this hotel create DTO. So let's add a new class and let's call this one hotel get DTO. So that would represent. No, it's really not about ignoring Mohammed. I really like to have this discussion, and as said, there really aren't any bad answers. And I guess from this type of session, the most important thing is to get involved, to get a discussion going, because this is also how you learn the best. Okay, so we'll have this hotel get DTO. So what we'll do with this hotel get DTO is we'll have all the properties that we have in the hotel create DTO. So we'll just copy them over, but on the other hand, we will also have a public int hotel ID. You see, so we have a DTO for the create, so what the consumers needs to provide us in the body, but we have also a DTO for what we actually return from the API when somebody makes a GET request. And this one contains all the properties that we need and excludes the properties that we don't need. So in this case, it excludes the list of rooms because we don't want to show it right now. Now, what we can do in this case is, well, we can go back in our controller, and instead of we can perform all this type of changes, we save everything to the database, and now we can say hotel get DTO hotel get equals new hotel get DTO. Okay, so we have this, and theoretically, of course, hotel get we have to map everything equals, and this time we map from the domain hotel because there we also have the ID, and we have hotel get dot city, that would be domain would be this one, city of course, and then we'll have hotel get dot what's the next one, name would be domain hotel dot name. Then we'll have hotel get what's the next one that we have, description equals, sorry, that should be an equal sign, domain hotel dot description, and then we'll have hotel get dot what's the next, I guess it's the hotel ID, and that would be domain model, sorry, domain hotel dot hotel ID. And I guess the only thing that we still need here is hotel get dot stars equals domain hotel dot stars. So we have created this DTO here. We have mapped all the properties to it, and then when we return that one. We return hotel get, and since we already have this hotel get DTO, and we can just come here. Or you know what? No, I guess we'll keep it like that for now. Let's run the application and check out actually what has changed so far by implementing this type of pattern of using a DTO for create and using a DTO for get. Okay, so let's just create a new hotel in this case. Let's try it out. So once again, as we had previously, my, I don't know, third hotel, I guess, should be this one. Let's make it as number of stars. Let's have this with 5. And you know what? Let's leave address, city, country, description as literally a string. So it would be the word string, because we don't really care about that right now. Okay, so let's execute this one. Okay, and you see that here right now we have received a JSON body that contains the ID. Once again, the ID is generated by the database, so we don't have to take care about them. Now the name is null. Why is name null? I guess we have mapped it. We haven't mapped that one. Okay, so yeah, that's something that we will have to fix. Now we have the number of stars. We have the, and also country is null. Okay, I guess the mapping is not correct somewhere, but we will take care about it. But the idea is here that we actually don't have a list of rooms. So once again, for the body that the consumer needs to provide, we just have only the information that the consumer needs to provide. And for that, we have a hotel create DTO. But for the responses, when somebody wants to get resources, we have all this information, but also including the hotel ID, but without the rooms. And that's why we have this hotel create, hotel get DTO. Now let's try to find out why those were null. So it's hotel get city, it's domain hotel.city, and hotel get.name is domain hotel.name. So something actually went wrong here, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly why, but we also won't concentrate on this right now very much. So the whole thing is that what we would need to do right now is to also adapt the other endpoints to use DTOs, because when we get a list of hotels, well, each hotel in the list should have this form here. So we would need the hotel get DTO. When we get by ID, once again, what we would need to do is we would need the hotel get DTO that we have here. Okay, now we are in the create, so here we are fine. In the update hotel, probably I want to be able to have exactly the same body that we have for creation, because in this case it would contain updated properties, I would say. Okay, so we would have to also change this method here. And for the delete, we don't really care because we don't delete anything. We just need the ID, and based on the ID, we perform the delete on that. So we are good with the delete one. Now, the problem is, as Mohammed mentioned earlier, is that, okay, right now we have only a few properties, okay? Like here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So here somewhere we have a problem with the mapping properly. However, the idea is that, of course, if I have classes, and this is perfectly fine, or it could happen, that contain maybe 40 properties, then writing everything by hand and doing this translation is really not the best thing to do. And yeah, I see that's a problem with the name. The name is missing here, but also the country is missing here, I guess. Well, however, what I'm about to show you right now will surely also solve this problem here. So, once again, if we have 40 properties, performing this type of translations, let's call them translations, between this DTO and our class could become very cumbersome, because it's really, you would have to literally write code for hours just to map properties here. But fortunately, for all the major challenges that we face, there are third-party libraries that might help. And there is such a third-party library that was created especially or specifically for mapping from one class to the other. So exactly for the scenario in which we are right now. And that library is called AutoMapper. So let's install that. We need to right-click the dependencies and manage NuGet packages. This is how we install third-party libraries. And here we have this browse. And here you can search after the name. And in this case, it is AutoMapper. So this is exactly what we need to install. Now, when it comes to ASP.NET Core, and here that's an important thing. It's not that well, it wouldn't work otherwise, but it's much easier. So you see that we kind of have here two libraries. We have this AutoMapper, and we have this AutoMapper extensions Microsoft dependency injection. Now, this is a very important thing, because AutoMapper is a library that could be used also in applications that are not ASP.NET Core. In ASP.NET Core, if you remember, I guess already the second lesson that we have, one of the crucial features that we have is that we have this dependency injection container. So what this package actually does, it's AutoMapper, so this package, but it is adapted to be used in ASP.NET Core very easily. And that's why, since we are in ASP.NET Core, we will be installing this one, so AutoMapper extensions Microsoft dependency injection, and we can install the latest version of it. So just click on install. It would probably also ask you for something. No, it actually doesn't ask you for anything. So right now we have this library installed. If we go here on the installed tab, we see that we have this this AutoMapper extensions Microsoft dependency injection. So with this one, we are good to go. And why this package is here adapted for ASP.NET Core? Because we can right now simply register it as a service and use it afterwards through dependency injection. So we'll go in configure services and say here services dot add AutoMapper. Add AutoMapper is a method from the package that we have installed. Now there is one thing that we need to provide, and I really wouldn't like to go into details on how this works because that's a little bit more complicated. But what we need to provide here in this case is say here type of and specify the name of the class in which we are right now, which is the startup. Now, why we do that is actually that when we say this to AutoMapper, it would actually look in which assembly this startup class is, and it will scan this assembly for classes that might be useful for AutoMapper. Now, what type of classes, we'll see it just in 1 second, because there is one more step to configure before we can actually use this AutoMapper to automatically do the mappings for us. And this step, for this step, we would need to create a new folder, and to have a very clear overview about what each folder does, let's call this AutoMapper. And the idea is that in order for AutoMapper to work, in our case, to translate from a hotel create DTO to a hotel, and from a hotel to a hotel get DTO, in fact, the problem here is that, we have to specify it, okay? What are the mappings? So what should you map to what? So we need to specify that. And we specify that in classes that we call configuration profiles for AutoMapper. So in this AutoMapper folder that we have created, we'll create a new class. And let's call this hotel mapping profiles. Because this class will contain the mappings that AutoMapper needs to perform. And the only thing is that in this class, it should inherit from profile. Profile is a class from the AutoMapper package that we have installed. So we have to add the using here at the top, and everything should be right. And the way that we configure this is that we create a constructor. And in this constructor, we use this create map method. This create map method comes from this AutoMapper library. Now, this create map method is a generic one, and it's actually very, very simple. Even if you don't understand exactly what generic means, the idea here is that we need to specify a source and a destination. So from which class should I map to which class should I map? And let's start with our first scenario when we want to create a hotel. We have a hotel create DTO, and we want to map that hotel create DTO to a hotel. Of course, we need also here to add the usings for the DTOs, and of course also for the domain model. And exactly the same way, we need to create a map. Once again, we have to specify the source. In this case, the source is a hotel, and the destination is a hotel get DTO. And just by doing that, AutoMapper will actually know how to do the mappings. Now, once again, I don't want to really go into a lot of details right now into how AutoMapper works, but it actually just compares the properties. So if you have the same property names in the source that correspond to the property names in the destination, AutoMapper will map them automatically. If you have some custom things, then you can surely do that, but that's certainly out of scope for this lesson right now. So the idea is that we have created these definitions or these instructions for AutoMapper on how to actually do those mappings. Yes, it is. There is even a playlist for that. It's called, like we have here in the title, ASP.NET Core for Absolute Beginners, and you can see actually all the lessons that we already had from this series. So everything is on the channel. Right after we finish, it will be there. And if you haven't noticed, Marys, We also have a GitHub repository, and it's specified in the description of this video, so you can check that repository as well. And the repository has branches named after the lessons. So the lesson 2 branch contains the code that we have written in lesson 2, then lesson 3, lesson 4, lesson 5, and so on. After this lesson, there will be a branch which will be called lesson 7, and it will contain all the code that we have written right now. Okay, good. So back to our things here. So we have instructed AutoMapper how to exactly do those mappings. Now, the last thing that we need to do is jump back to our controller. And as said, we have added AutoMapper as a service. So this means that it is available for dependency injection. That's why we'll have here a field private read-only IMapper. And AutoMapper registers a service of type IMapper. That's why we use that one. Once again, that's registered for you by AutoMapper. You don't have to take care about that. Just to know that you can request an IMapper to be injected wherever you need it. And of course, we need it in the constructor in this case. But of course, here it has, the name should be without the underscore. And here we just assign our field to what we get in our constructor. Okay, so right now we have this mapper. Let's first go to this create, and we have right now, you see that we have this hotel create DTO, and we want to translate it to a hotel class. And we have written here a bunch of lines of code, so we can just simply get rid of that. And instead of that, we can say here var domain hotel equals mapper.map. And right now here, once again, of course, here is a double P, and then we should be good to go. Here we still have this red squiggly line, because when we want to map, we also need to specify a source, and we have to specify a destination. So what would be the source is passed in as a parameter to the map method. Now, in our case, the source is this hotel here, because we want to translate it to a hotel from our domain model. So this is the source. So we put it here in as an incoming parameter. But this map method is also generic, and we have to specify the destination. And here we specify that the destination is a hotel. So in other words, the way how we could express this is, please map me the hotel that you receive here to a hotel of this type. And then based on the mappings that we have just created, AutoMapper will know exactly how to do that. And if we hover the mouse over it, you see that this is of type hotel, because AutoMapper does this type of mapping. So we have replaced a bunch of lines of code with only one. And then we have here the next step, where we want actually to map from the domain hotel that we have here to a hotel get DTO. So once again, let's get rid of everything, and let's have here var hotel get equals, and once again mapper.map. I will just say this explanation again. The source is passed in as a parameter to the map method. So in our case, the source is the domain hotel, because this is what we want to map. And the destination, we pass it as a generic parameter, and in this case is a hotel get. Hotel get DTO, sorry. That should be the complete name for that. I see there is a startup dossier, so I guess it's not, no, it's not .NET 6, it's .NET 5. .NET 6 is too new, and as this is a lesson for beginners, 99% of the projects that you will probably face in the coming year will still be .NET 5 or .NET Core 3.1. And that's why this lesson is not based on .NET 6, but there are a lot of videos on this channel on .NET 6, both the minimal API and the regular stuff, and the new startup model, how it works, and things like that. So yeah, you might also want to to check those videos, because we have some stuff also on .NET 6 here. Okay, so now we have done all the mappings and we just returned this hotel get. So let's just run this and try to understand, or try to see actually, how things work right now. So let's try to create a new hotel. Let's just go here, try it out. Ping. My newest hotel. Let's make this to be a 2-star hotel. Address. Some address, city. Some city. Country. Some country, and description. My newest hotel description. Okay, so let's execute that and see exactly what we get as a response. So we see that we got a response and everything worked fine. So we got the body, and the response, we get it in the format that we need. With the ID, we have the ID, but we don't have the list of rooms. So AutoMapper has automatically done all the mappings that we needed because we have configured it to do so. So we were able to replace actually a bunch of lines of code with only one line of code to do those mappings. Now, if we go to this get method and try it out, this is the get all. Now, this one still returns us here with rooms null, because we haven't updated all our controller actions to actually work with AutoMapper. So that's exactly what we will do right now. So let's take them one by one and implement this AutoMapper stuff. Now, here in the get all, we still need to get all the hotels from the database, which is okay. But instead of returning the hotels, we can have here var hotels get equals mapper.map. And once again, to not forget, as a parameter, we provide the source, which is hotels, and as a generic parameter, we specify the destination, which is a hotel get DTO. And then this should work, and that's what we will return in this case. Hotels get. Okay. And right now, this method should also return only the things, or the hotels, in a form that we actually want to present to the consumers. Now, for this get by ID, it's exactly the same thing. We can even just copy that and just change a little bit the naming, because it's actually exactly the same, only that it's not hotels get, it's hotel get, and it's not hotels but hotel, and that should be it. And of course, here we have this hotel get that we return. So that's quite cool, I would say. Okay, so going to the next one, this is the create hotel. That's exactly the one that we had previously. And of course, that's here is everything sorted out with the mappings. Now, the next one is this update. For the update, we are fine with this hotel create DTO. So we'll change this hotel create DTO. Of course, this will generate us right now some problems, but the cool thing here is that we can actually do the following thing, and it should work. Let's have here var to update equals mapper.map, because we want to map something to something, and we want to map the updated hotel that we get from the body, and we want to map it to a hotel, so the class that we actually want to write in the database. And what we do then here is we can actually get rid of all these lines. We don't need them anymore. Now, the only thing that we need to do here, and theoretically it should work, is for the to update, dot hotel ID equals ID. And theoretically, right now, if we pass in here to update, the update method in our DB context, actually this should identify by the ID the resource that actually needs to be updated. So we will check this in a few seconds. And for the delete, we have said that we actually don't need anything because here we just get it by ID, we remove it, we save the changes, and then return no content. So we are good with that. So I guess we can right now just start to once again run the application, play around just a little bit. And let's check if everything is working as expected. So first, this get, I would expect to have in the body this a bunch of hotel get DTOs, or a list of them. Okay, I get missing type map configuration. Okay, unsupported mapping. So this is an error that kind of says that there is an unsupported mapping. And I wonder why, because we have, this usually means that you haven't created a mapping for that. And that's quite, because we want to map from a hotel to a hotel get DTO. Okay, and I'm a little bit baffled right now. So let's go once again. It was this method. So here we get a list of hotels, of course, because we have a list. Oh, sorry for that. That was a rookie mistake. So we want to map to a list of hotels. So that should be our destination, a list. Of course, we need this system collections generic. Okay. So that was the problem, because we want to map to a list. Now, if you have a list, if you have created a map for that, like we have here, it doesn't matter if you just map one resource or one object, or if you map a list of them, it really doesn't matter. For each of them, it will apply the same map that you have defined here. Now, the only thing is, of course, when you type here the destination, that should be, of course, of type list. Otherwise, it will try to get this list of hotels and try to map it to only one hotel. And of course, it doesn't know how to do that. But right now, if we run it again, that should be okay. I guess this problem should not be there anymore. Maybe some other one. It always happens when coding to have problems. There's no perfect software out there, and there never was. Okay, so let's try it out. Execute again. And I would expect this time everything to work fine. And indeed, you see that we have already a bunch of different hotels here. And let's maybe just play around with this hotel. Let's play with this one, which has the ID 2. Okay, so what I would like to check, because the create we have already tested, so that one was okay. Now for the get by ID, let's provide ID 2. Now that one has returned us only one object, and that is correct, so everything's fine here. Now the thing that is maybe a little bit trickier, and hopefully it would be okay, let's actually just take this entire body that we got here, because we just want to update one property probably. So try it out. So we want to try it out to update the hotel with ID 2. Originally this hotel has these properties, and let's just change the number of stars from 3 to be 5. So that's actually the only change that we make right now. And let's execute that. And we see that we have a 204 no content. So it means that theoretically this should be correct right now. So if we rerun this one, get by ID, right now it had previously stars 3. I would expect it right now to have 5. And in fact, it has. So the update process was also very, very successful. Now, there is, as we are here in at this current step, there's still one more tweak that I would like to make to our controllers, and this would actually also touch base with another very important aspect of how should we actually return data. And we have here two scenarios that could be very, very common. Now, the first scenario, which probably will be less common, is that when you have this get all hotels, you won't have any in the database. So what do you return in that case? So this is the first scenario that we would have to think about. Now, the second scenario that we have to think about is when you want to get a hotel by ID, like it's for instance this one. What if you don't find a hotel in the database with that ID? And that would apply when you want to get it, just to take a look at the resource, but that would apply also if you want to update the hotel, because if it's an ID for a hotel that it doesn't exist, well, what should we do in that case? And it also applies for the ID, because when for the delete, because when we want to delete, what happens actually is that we also have to search by the ID, and if the ID specified by the consumer is not in the database, we won't find anything. So what do we return in that case? So just to summarize this, we have actually two scenarios. What should we return if a get all method or an action that returns kind of like an array, you don't have anything in the database? What should you return? And the second scenario, what should you return when you try to perform something on a resource for an ID that it doesn't exist in the database? And here the answers are quite simple, at least for the get all. It's very simple, because if you don't have anything in the database, you just return an empty array. So here is nothing that we would have to change, because if we don't have anything in the database, then the array would be empty, and that's it. And that's 100% compliant to the REST principles. And that's something that should stick with you really, really for a long time. That whenever you get a list of resources, if you don't have anything in that list, just return the empty list. Never return anything else. Just return an empty list or an empty array. That's how it is supposed to work. Now, the other part is a little bit more tricky, because when we want to get a hotel by an ID and we don't find it in the database, we cannot just return the hotel because we don't find it. So we don't know exactly what to map. And in that case, in this scenario, where you need to perform any type of action on a resource by its ID, if you don't find the ID in the database, then you have to return a not found response, a 404 not found. And that's actually quite easy to do here. It's actually very, very simple. The only thing that we have to do here is place an if and say that if hotel equals null, because we have this first or default, which means that if it doesn't find it in the database, it will have default value, which for class it is null. So we check that if hotel is null, it means that it wasn't found in a database. So in that case, we just return not found. And that would be it. Otherwise, of course, we don't enter into this if, so we will just do whatever we have done before. So right now, if we can do that here, we can just copy this. Now in the create, we don't have such problem because we just get the body and we create the hotel itself. So we kind of don't have this problem here in the create, but in the update, we have exactly the same thing. So here, but here actually we don't return any content. So the problem is that if Entity Framework Core will not find the resource, I don't know exactly, maybe it throws an exception. But no, I guess it simply won't update the resource. So in that case here, you don't really have to do anything. But here in the delete, once again, if this is null, it means that it was not found in the database. So once again, we didn't just return not found. If it's not the case, then of course we just go on and remove, save the changes and return no content. Now, this is once again a very, very important aspect of a REST API, to return a 404 not found whenever you don't find the resource that you are supposed to manipulate in one way or the other. So let's run the application again and let's try it out. So let's get a hotel by ID, and I don't know, let's try it out. Probably I don't have something with this ID. So let's execute. Now it looks in the database. We have seen that whenever we make a first call here, it's actually, and we actually have here a 404 not found. And we see that we also have a body. Now we have this body because ASP.NET Core by default, when we return an error message or a status code that kind of indicates an error. It could be either a client error, which is 404, or in the range of 400, or a 500 range, which means that it was a server error. ASP.NET Core by default kind of like creates this type of answer. So that's not something that we have created. This is something that automatically ASP.NET Core has created since we have returned this 404 not found, which is actually okay. And the same thing should happen if we try to delete a hotel for the ID 123, and we know we don't have such hotel here, and we see once again 404 not found. So that's totally working right now. Okay, so I guess that's pretty much it what I wanted to cover today, or well, at least I wanted also to cover model validation, but that is another topic that would require quite some time. And well, it took us long enough with this concept of DTOs and using AutoMapper. But if after this lesson you really understand better what actually these DTOs are and why are they actually helpful and how to use AutoMapper, then that is already awesome. This is also the point where you can come with some new questions. So if you have any questions, just please feel free to share them. I would really like to spend a few minutes here for a discussion on that. And other than that, if you want to support this stream and say a thank you, right below the chat box you have this super thanks button where you can make a donation of your choice or a super sticker. So please feel free to use it. It would be highly appreciated. Of course, if you don't, then we'll still make this series. But if you just want to contribute and support this channel, then that would be really, really awesome. Okay, and still I am waiting for questions from your side. I said that would be very, very important right now, because I'm aware that this kind of concepts of DTOs is not maybe the easiest one to grasp at the beginning, but it's also not very, very, very complicated. So that's why I think that the best thing to do would be to ask right now if you have any questions or things that you would still like to find out. Also, I want to tell you that probably tomorrow I will do another live stream with creating an API, but that one is for more advanced stuff. But if you just want to tune in to also kind of like get in touch with some more advanced things about how to develop an API, because really this is a course for beginners. So of course we touch base really the most important topics, but in that other live stream we really create an API the way that I would create it right now for a production application. So you are free to also tune into that one. I'm sure it might be also useful for you, but I'm still hoping and waiting for some questions from your side right now. I had to drink something because not necessarily easy to talk that much. So last chance, guys and ladies, of course, if you have a question, that's the moment of truth. So ask it or it will remain forever unanswered. Okay, hopefully not. Surely not forever, but at least for now it will probably remain unanswered. Okay. Good. So I guess there is no question for now. So in that case, I would really like to thank you very, very, very much. Okay, there is a question that arrived right now. Why you use async method? It's a good question. And the reason is because we are using the DB context, and the DB context talks to a database. So it's actually a network connection to a database. And as you know that all type of these connections to a database or making HTTP calls or to a file, they all have, or it's better to actually have them work asynchronously. And that's why we use async here, because we use the database, the connection to the database. If everything would have been in memory, then we wouldn't have here async. And in fact, if you go right after this one to the first video in the series, actually the second, I guess, where we implement the CRUD endpoints for the first time, we actually use, well, something like a list. And in that case, you'll see that these methods were not async, were regular methods that were returning an action result. But the moment that we have introduced the database, which was last week actually, we have changed these methods to be async, because calling the database should be asynchronously. And hopefully I managed to answer you this one. So that's the main reason we are talking to a database here. It's not in memory, it's a real database. So it's a connection that takes time, and the application might need to serve other requests in the meantime, and not just wait for this one to finish. So that's why we use async and await here in these controllers. Please let me know if the answer was clear enough, or if you're maybe looking for something else, because that's also possible that I might get the question wrong. Okay. Good. Okay then. Once again, thank you very, very much for watching, for being a part of this, and for asking questions. A special thanks to all of you that got involved and asked questions or said something here in the chat. It was really very, very much appreciated, and I am totally thankful and grateful to you. That makes also for me this kind of sessions a way better experience. So once again, thank you very much, and until the next time that we will catch up, please take care, and well, have a nice day, evening, whatever it is on your time zone. So bye.